The elevator doors slid shut with a soft whisper that sounded like the final breath of a dying dream. Luna Martinez pressed her back against the cold steel wall, her termination letter crumpled in her trembling fist, the corporate seal of Meridian Technologies bleeding ink across her palm like a fresh wound. 27 floors below, the city sprawled in all directions, a maze of glass and ambition where she had just become another casualty of corporate politics. "Attitude problems," she whispered to her reflection in the polished doors, the words tasting bitter as burnt coffee. Her dark eyes, rimmed with unshed tears, stared back with a mixture of rage and disbelief. The woman in the reflection wore a navy blazer that had seen better days, her long black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail that had started the morning neat and professional, but now hung slightly askew, a physical manifestation of how thoroughly her world had been upended in the span of 30 minutes. The elevator descended in mechanical precision, each floor marking another second further from the life she thought she was building. 48th floor, the executive suites where decisions were made that affected thousands of lives. 47th floor, where Marcus Blackwood, her now former supervisor, probably sat in his leather chair, already forgetting her name. 46th floor, accounting, where Sarah Chen had become her closest ally, where Tom Rodriguez had shared his homemade tamales every Friday, where Mrs. Patterson had kept a photo of her grandchildren next to a small succulent that Luna had given her last Christmas. The memory of that succulent, a tiny jade plant in a ceramic pot painted with swirling blues and greens, sent a fresh wave of anguish through Luna's chest. She had found it at a weekend market, thinking of Mrs. Patterson's complaints about the sterile office environment. "Something alive," Luna had said when she placed it on the older woman's desk. "Something that grows, even in fluorescent light." Mrs. Patterson had teared up, confessing that it was the first gift a coworker had ever given her in 15 years with the company. Now Luna wondered if Mrs. Patterson would keep the plant, or if it would join the forgotten remnants of terminated employees in some storage closet, another small life extinguished by corporate efficiency. The elevator shuddered slightly as it passed the 30th floor, a mechanical hiccup that Luna felt in her bones. Meridian Technologies had been her life for 3 years, her refuge after college, her chance to prove that the daughter of Isabella Martinez, renowned architect and force of nature, could make her own mark on the world. Not through grand designs and sweeping visions like her mother, but through careful analysis, patient problem-solving, and the quiet satisfaction of making systems work better. She had started in data analysis, spending her days swimming through spreadsheets and databases, finding patterns that others missed. Her reports had saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars by identifying inefficiencies in their supply chain. Her recommendations had streamlined processes that had been bureaucratic nightmares for years. She had worked late, arrived early, and never complained when Marcus took credit for her ideas in board meetings. Attitude problems. The phrase echoed in the confined space, bouncing off the mirrored walls like a mantra of injustice. What attitude problems? Speaking up when she noticed the Williams account was being mishandled? Suggesting improvements to the client management system? Questioning why the diversity initiative had stalled for the 3rd consecutive quarter? Luna's phone buzzed in her purse, probably Sarah texting from her desk, having witnessed the aftermath of Luna's summoning to Marcus's office. Sarah, with her wire-rimmed glasses and collection of cat-themed coffee mugs, who had become Luna's lifeline in the sometimes cutthroat environment of corporate America. Sarah, who packed extra lunch every day because she knew Luna often forgot to eat when she was deep in analysis. Sarah, who had covered for Luna during her mother's hospital visits last year, never asking questions, but always offering quiet support. The memory of those hospital visits created a knot in Luna's throat. Isabella Martinez, lying in that sterile bed, machines monitoring every heartbeat, every breath. Cancer, the doctors had said, though they used gentler terms: aggressive cells, treatment protocols, managing expectations. Luna had held her mother's hand, feeling the calluses earned from decades of drafting tables and construction sites, and promised that she would build something meaningful with her life, something that mattered. Now, clutching a termination letter in a descending elevator, that promise felt as fragile as tissue paper. The elevator stopped at the 15th floor, doors opening to reveal a cluster of maintenance workers in Navy coveralls. Their supervisor, a weathered man named Carlos, whom Luna had often greeted in passing, looked up and immediately noticed her distress. His face, lined with years of honest work and genuine concern, creased with worry. "Miss Luna? You okay?" Carlos stepped forward slightly, his voice carrying the gentle accent of someone who had learned English as a second language but spoke kindness as his first. Behind him, his crew, Maria, Jose, and the young man everyone called Cisco, looked on with similar expressions of concern. These were people who noticed when someone was hurting, who remembered names and asked about families. Luna managed a wan smile, not trusting her voice. Carlos had been at Meridian for over 20 years, had seen employees come and go like seasons. His daughter was studying engineering at the local community college, a fact he shared with quiet pride whenever Luna asked about his family. Luna had once helped Maria with her English homework when she was struggling with a report about water systems, spending her lunch hour explaining technical terms and helping restructure sentences. "I'm okay," Luna finally managed, though the words felt like a lie. "Just having a difficult day." Carlos nodded, understanding more than she had said. "Some days are like that. Tomorrow may be better, yes?" His optimism, genuine and hard-earned, almost broke her resolve to keep her composure. "Maybe," Luna whispered as the door slid closed again, leaving Carlos and his crew behind. But she wasn't sure she believed in better tomorrows anymore. The elevator continued its descent, passing floors filled with people who were going about their ordinary Thursday afternoon, unaware that Luna's world had just collapsed. On the 12th floor, the marketing department where Janet Morrison had always brightened when Luna stopped by with quarterly reports, Janet, who had 3 teenagers and managed to maintain her sanity through dark humor and an impressive collection of stress balls. On the 10th floor, the HR department where Luna had filed her initial complaint about Marcus's treatment of the junior staff, only to be told that management styles vary and that she should focus on adaptation rather than resistance. The 8th floor housed the company's small legal team, where Robert Kim had once thanked Luna for her detailed analysis of a contract dispute. His gratitude had been genuine, professional, and one of the few times she had truly felt valued for her contributions rather than merely tolerated for her presence. Robert had Asian parents, like many of her college friends, carried the weight of family expectations with quiet dignity, and understood the delicate balance of honoring tradition while forging your own path. As the floors counted down, 7, 6, 5, Luna found herself thinking about the building's history. Meridian Technologies had been founded 32 years ago by a group of engineers who had met at MIT, their vision rooted in the belief that technology should solve real-world problems rather than create new ones. The company had grown from a small consulting firm to a major player in infrastructure technology, their systems managing everything from water treatment facilities to smart city initiatives. The lobby approached like a final verdict. Through the glass walls, Luna could see the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the marble floor, illuminating the company motto etched in brushed steel letters across the main wall. "Building tomorrow today." She had walked past those words every morning for 3 years, finding inspiration in their promise of progress and purpose. Now they seemed like mockery, a reminder of the tomorrow she would no longer be part of building. Behind the reception desk sat Grace Williams, the evening shift receptionist who had always greeted Luna with genuine warmth. Grace, whose son was serving overseas, who knitted scarves for homeless shelters in her spare time, who remembered everyone's name and asked about their weekends and their families. Grace looked up as Luna approached, her smile fading as she registered Luna's expression and the crumpled papers in her hand. "Luna? Honey, what's wrong?" Grace's voice carried the maternal concern of someone who had seen too many good people ground down by corporate machinery. She had been at Meridian for 8 years, had witnessed reorganizations and layoffs, had comforted employees on their worst days and celebrated with them on their best. "I've been terminated," Luna said, the words feeling surreal even as she spoke them. "Marcus said I had attitude problems." Grace's face darkened with an anger that was both immediate and righteous. "That man wouldn't know a good employee if one saved his miserable career," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper but carrying the force of absolute conviction. "You're one of the best people in this building, Luna. One of the few who actually cares about doing good work instead of just playing politics." The validation hit Luna like a wave, threatening to dissolve the careful composure she had maintained throughout this nightmare. Grace had no reason to lie, no political agenda, no hidden motives. She simply saw people clearly and spoke truth without artifice. "I need to turn in my badge," Luna said, though the words felt like admitting defeat. The small plastic card in her wallet had been her key to purpose, to contribution, to the sense that she was building something meaningful with her days. Now it was just another piece of corporate detritus, as disposable as she had apparently been. Grace reached for the badge with obvious reluctance, as if handling evidence of an injustice she was powerless to correct. "This isn't right," she murmured, shaking her head. "There's something else going on here, something that doesn't add up." Luna paused, looking into Grace's eyes and seeing not just sympathy, but genuine puzzlement. Grace had been a witness to countless workplace dramas, had developed an instinct for reading the undercurrents of office politics. If she sensed something amiss, it was worth noting. "What do you mean?" Luna asked, though she wasn't sure she was ready for whatever answer Grace might offer. Grace glanced around the lobby, ensuring their conversation remained private. "Marcus has been different lately. More nervous, more, I don't know, like he's waiting for something. And there have been meetings, executive meetings that weren't on any official calendar. People coming and going who don't normally visit our office." The information settled in Luna's mind like pieces of a puzzle she didn't yet know how to assemble. Corporate politics were often murky, but Grace had identified something that felt more significant than typical workplace maneuvering, something that cast her termination in a different light, not just as the arbitrary decision of a difficult supervisor, but as part of a larger pattern she couldn't yet see. As Luna walked through the glass doors into the late afternoon heat, she turned back for one last look at the building that had been her professional home. The sun caught the Meridian Technologies logo, reflecting it across the plaza in fractured golden light. Somewhere in those 27 floors above, people were continuing their work, unaware that one of their colleagues had just been erased from their daily reality. But Grace's words lingered like a question mark, a suggestion that this story was far from over, that perhaps her termination was not an ending, but a beginning. The first move in a game whose rules she didn't yet understand, whose stakes she couldn't yet imagine. The city stretched before her, vast and indifferent, but for the first time since walking into Marcus's office that morning, Luna felt something other than defeat. She felt curiosity, and in that small spark of intellectual hunger, she recognized something that Marcus Blackwood had failed to extinguish, the part of her that her mother had always said was unconquerable. The part of her that never stopped asking questions. Luna's apartment greeted her with the silence of interrupted routine. The one-bedroom space on the 14th floor of a converted warehouse reflected her practical nature. Clean lines, functional furniture, and carefully chosen details that spoke of someone who valued substance over style. The exposed brick walls, a remnant of the building's industrial past, provided texture and warmth that reminded her daily that beautiful things could emerge from utilitarian foundations. She dropped her purse by the door and stood in her small entryway, still holding the termination letter like evidence of a crime she couldn't quite believe had been committed. The afternoon light streaming through her large windows eliminated motes of dust dancing in the air. Ordinary particles made magical by circumstance and perspective. A metaphor, she realized, for how drastically context could change meaning. The kitchen counter held the remnants of her morning routine. A coffee mug with the logo of her alma mater, a plate that had held whole wheat toast, and a banana peel destined for the small compost container she maintained on her fire escape. These Mundane objects now felt like artifacts from a previous life, when she had been a person who woke up with purpose, who had somewhere important to be. Luna walked to her living room window, which offered a view of the city that had always provided comfort during difficult times. From this height, she could see the rhythm of urban life: pedestrians navigating sidewalks with determined purpose, delivery trucks maneuvering through narrow streets, construction crews building tomorrow's skyline. The view reminded her that she was part of something larger, that individual struggles were threads in a vast tapestry of human ambition and perseverance. Her phone buzzed insistently from her purse. 3 text messages from Sarah, 2 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize, and a voicemail notification. Luna retrieved the device reluctantly, knowing that engaging with the outside world would make her termination feel more real, more final. Sarah's messages were exactly what she had expected. "Are you okay? Marcus looked like he swallowed a toad after you left. People are asking questions. Janet from marketing said something's not right. Call me when you're ready. We're going to figure this out." The voicemail was from her mother. Luna stared at the notification, her thumb hovering over the play button. Isabella Martinez had an uncanny ability to sense when her daughter needed support, a maternal radar that seemed to transcend physical distance. But Luna wasn't ready to explain what had happened, wasn't prepared for the mixture of comfort and analysis that her mother would inevitably provide. Instead, she walked to her small home office, a corner of her bedroom where she had set up a desk facing another window, creating a workspace that felt open rather than confined. The desk held her personal laptop, a small succulent similar to the one she had given Mrs. Patterson, and a framed photograph of her and her mother at Luna's college graduation. In the photo, they stood beneath blooming cherry trees, both wearing expressions of quiet satisfaction and boundless possibility. Luna opened her laptop and stared at the blank screen. Not sure what she was looking for, but knowing she needed to do something productive, something that would help her process what had happened. She found herself typing Marcus Blackwood Meridian Technologies into a search engine, driven by the same analytical instincts that had made her excel at her job. The results were predictably corporate: LinkedIn profiles, company press releases, industry publications mentioning his involvement in various projects. But as Luna dug deeper, she began to notice gaps and inconsistencies. Marcus had joined Meridian 18 months ago, arriving from a consulting firm that seemed to exist primarily on paper. His LinkedIn profile mentioned achievements that were vague and inverifiable. His educational background, while impressive on the surface, lacked the specific details that usually accompanied legitimate credentials. The more she researched, the more questions emerged. Grace's intuition about executive meetings and nervous behavior began to feel less like office gossip and more like symptoms of something significant. She found herself falling into the focused state that had always characterized her best analytical work, her mind organizing information and identifying patterns with the methodical precision that had made her valuable to Meridian. Her phone rang, interrupting her research. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and Luna realized she couldn't avoid her friend's concern any longer. "How are you holding up?" Sarah's voice carried the warmth of genuine friendship, tinged with the outrage of someone who had witnessed an injustice. "I'm trying to make sense of it," Luna replied, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded. "Something doesn't feel right about the whole situation." "That's what everyone is saying. Tom from maintenance said Marcus was on the phone all morning, speaking in hushed tones like he was afraid someone would overhear. And Mrs. Patterson mentioned that he's been requesting files on employees who aren't even in his department." Luna felt a chill that had nothing to do with her apartment's air conditioning. What kind of files? Personnel records, performance evaluations, even timesheet data. It's like he's been building profiles on people, trying to identify, I don't know what, but Mrs. Patterson said it reminded her of the corporate restructuring that happened at her last job, right before they started laying people off. The information clicked into place with the research Luna had been conducting, creating a picture that was still unclear, but increasingly ominous. Marcus wasn't just a difficult supervisor. He was someone conducting a systematic review of the company, gathering intelligence for purposes that remained hidden. "Sarah, I need you to be careful," Luna said, her protective instincts overriding her own concerns. "If Marcus is planning something bigger, anyone who's been associated with me might become a target." "Let him try. Half the office thinks what happened to you is complete garbage. Janet's been asking questions, Tom's been spreading the word about how unfairly you've been treated, and even Mr. Kim from legal stopped by to ask if you were okay." The knowledge that her colleagues cared enough to ask questions provided a warmth that Luna hadn't expected. She had always been somewhat solitary at work, focused on her tasks rather than office socializing. But apparently, her quiet kindness and consistent professionalism had created connections she hadn't fully recognized. "There's something else," Sarah continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I overheard Marcus talking to someone about cleaning house before the transition. I don't know what transition he meant, but it sounded important." Luna's analytical mind immediately began processing this information. Transitions in corporate environments typically meant changes in ownership, leadership, or strategic direction. Combined with the unusual meetings Grace had mentioned and Marcus's apparent intelligence gathering, the picture suggested that Meridian Technologies was undergoing changes that hadn't been announced to regular employees. After ending the call with Sarah, Luna found herself pacing her small apartment, her mind racing with possibilities and implications. She had always been someone who needed to understand the systems she was a part of, to see how individual components fit together to create larger wholes. The idea that she had been terminated as part of a process she didn't understand was both frustrating and intellectually challenging. Her mother had always said that Luna inherited her father's gift for seeing patterns that others missed. Carlos Martinez had been a systems engineer who specialized in identifying inefficiencies and designing solutions, a talent that had made him invaluable to the aerospace company where he worked until his death in a car accident when Luna was 12. Isabella had often told Luna that she had her father's eyes, not just their dark brown color, but their way of looking at problems as puzzles waiting to be solved rather than obstacles to be endured. The memory of her father sparked an idea. Luna returned to her computer and began searching for information about Meridian's ownership structure, its board of directors, and any recent changes in corporate governance. If Marcus was preparing for a transition, there would be legal filings, regulatory documents, and public records that might provide clues about what was actually happening. The search proved more complex than she had anticipated. Meridian Technologies was privately held, which limited the amount of publicly available information, but Luna's experience in data analysis had taught her that patient research usually revealed more than initial searches suggested. She found references to subsidiary companies, holding structures, and financial relationships that painted a picture of an organization more complex than its public face suggested. As evening approached, Luna realized she had been researching for hours without stopping for food or rest. Her small apartment felt like a command center, her laptop screen filled with browser tabs containing fragments of information that were slowly assembling into a larger narrative. She made herself a simple dinner of pasta and vegetables, eating at her desk while continuing to read SEC filings and industry publications. The more she learned about Meridian's corporate structure, the more questions arose. The company's founding story, while compelling, contained inconsistencies that became apparent only through careful analysis. The original founders had retained ownership stakes that seemed unusually small for entrepreneurs who had built the company from nothing. Recent investments and partnerships suggested cash flow issues that weren't reflected in the company's public statements about growth and expansion. Most intriguingly, Luna discovered that several board members had connections to consulting firms and investment groups that specialized in corporate restructuring.
The pattern suggested that Meridian might be preparing for a sale, merger, or significant reorganization, exactly the kind of transition that would explain Marcus's behavior and his systematic evaluation of personnel. As she worked, Luna felt the familiar satisfaction of intellectual discovery, the sense that she was uncovering truth through careful analysis and persistent questioning. This was what she did best, taking scattered information and finding the connections that others missed. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was applying these skills to understand her own termination, using her talents to investigate the very company that had decided she wasn't valuable enough to keep. Her phone buzzed with another voicemail from her mother. This time, Luna didn't hesitate. Isabella Martinez deserved to know what had happened, and Luna needed the wisdom that only a mother could provide. "Mija?" Her mother's voice was warm but concerned. "I had a feeling something was wrong today. Are you okay?" Luna found herself smiling at her mother's intuition, a combination of parental sensitivity and the practical intelligence that had made Isabella successful in the male-dominated world of architecture. "I was fired today, Mom. My supervisor said I had attitude problems." The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough that Luna wondered if the call had been dropped. When Isabella finally spoke, her voice carried a mixture of outrage and analytical curiosity. "Tell me everything, from the beginning, and don't leave anything out." Luna spent the next hour recounting the events of the day, from Marcus's cold dismissal, to Grace's observations about unusual meetings, to Sarah's reports about office gossip and Marcus's suspicious behavior. As she spoke, she could almost hear her mother's mind working, processing information with the same systematic approach that had made her one of the most respected architects in the region. "This doesn't sound like a termination," Isabella said when Luna had finished. "This sounds like preparation. Someone is getting ready for something, and they wanted you out of the way before it happened." "That's what I've been thinking too. I've been researching the company's ownership structure, and there are signs that something significant is happening behind the scenes."
Good. Trust your instincts, Mija. Your analytical skills are exceptional. That's not just motherly pride talking, that's professional recognition. If you sense that something is wrong, keep digging until you find the truth. Isabella paused, and Luna could hear the sound of papers rustling in the background. Her mother was probably reviewing blueprints or specifications, working late as she always did when a project demanded her attention. "There's something else you should know," Isabella continued, her voice taking on a tone that Luna recognized as significant. "I've been meaning to tell you about some changes that are coming in my own work. I've been considering stepping back from some of my responsibilities, focusing more on design and less on business management." Luna felt a flutter of concern. Her mother had survived cancer and emerged stronger, but the experience had changed her perspective on work-life balance and the importance of focusing on what truly mattered. "Are you feeling okay? Is your health—" "My health is fine," Isabella interrupted gently. "This is about choice, not necessity. I want to spend more time on the projects that inspire me, and less time on the administrative aspects of running a business. But that means I need to find people I trust to handle the parts of my company that require careful management." The conversation continued for another few minutes, with Isabella offering both emotional support and practical advice about job searching and career transitions. But after they hung up, Luna found herself thinking about her mother's comments about stepping back and finding trustworthy people to manage business responsibilities. Isabella Martinez wasn't just a successful architect. She was the founder and principal of Martinez Design Associates, a firm that had grown from a one-woman operation to a respected company with projects throughout the region. Luna had always admired her mother's work from a distance, understanding it as creative and important, but fundamentally different from her own interests in systems analysis and organizational efficiency. But for the first time, Luna wondered if her skills might be more applicable to her mother's business than she had previously considered. The thought was both intriguing and intimidating, suggesting possibilities she had never seriously explored.
As night settled over the city, Luna continued her research into Meridian Technologies, driven by a combination of intellectual curiosity and personal investment in understanding what had happened to her. The termination that seemed like an ending that morning was beginning to feel like the opening chapter of a story she was only beginning to understand. Outside her window, the city lights created patterns that shifted with traffic and time, a visual reminder that every ending was also a beginning, that every conclusion created new possibilities. Luna closed her laptop finally, exhausted but oddly energized, knowing that tomorrow would bring new questions and, hopefully, new answers. She fell asleep thinking about systems and patterns, about the difference between what appeared to be true and what actually was true, about the possibility that losing one future might mean finding a better one.
The first voicemail was from Janet Morrison in marketing, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. Luna, this is Janet. I heard what happened yesterday, and I want you to know that it's complete bullshit. Marcus has been systematically targeting people who actually do good work, and everyone can see what's really happening here. Call me when you get this. The second message was from Robert Kim in legal, speaking in the careful tones of someone who understood the potential implications of recorded communications. Hi, Luna. This is Robert from legal. I'd like to speak with you about some concerns that have come to my attention regarding your termination. Would you be available for a confidential conversation today? The third voicemail made Luna's coffee cup pause halfway to her lips. The voice was unfamiliar, professional, and carried the authority of someone accustomed to being taken seriously. Ms. Martinez, this is Detective Patricia Reyes with the Financial Crimes Division of the Metropolitan Police Department. We understand you were recently terminated from Meridian Technologies, and we'd like to speak with you about your experiences there. This is regarding an ongoing investigation, and your cooperation would be appreciated. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Luna set down her coffee cup with trembling hands, her analytical mind immediately racing through implications. A police investigation into Meridian Technologies cast her termination in an entirely different light, not as a workplace dispute, but as a potential piece of evidence in something much larger and more serious. She called Robert Kim first, reaching his direct line before normal business hours and knowing that lawyers often started their days early. Luna, thank you for calling back. Robert's voice was warm but cautious. I need to be very careful about how we discuss this, but I want you to know that several people have raised concerns about the circumstances of your termination. What kind of concerns? Luna asked, though she suspected she already knew. Questions about documentation, about the process that was followed, about whether proper procedures were observed. Marcus submitted termination paperwork that was, let's say it was unusually sparse in terms of supporting evidence. When HR requested additional documentation, he became defensive and claimed that personnel decisions were his prerogative. Luna felt a mixture of validation and apprehension. So you're saying the termination might not have been properly handled? I'm saying that there are procedural questions that need to be addressed, Robert replied carefully. But there's something else. I received a call yesterday afternoon from someone claiming to represent Meridian's board of directors, asking about your personnel file. When I asked for proper authorization, they became evasive. It's unusual. The conversation continued for several minutes, with Robert providing information that painted a picture of systematic irregularities and procedural violations. As they spoke, Luna found herself taking notes, her training in data analysis automatically organizing the information into patterns and categories. After ending the call with Robert, Luna immediately dialed the number Detective Reyes had provided. The phone rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. Detective Reyes, Financial Crimes Division? Detective, this is Luna Martinez. I received your voicemail about wanting to speak with me regarding Meridian Technologies. Ms. Martinez, thank you for calling back so quickly. Are you available to meet this morning? I think you'll find our conversation enlightening. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop in downtown, a public location that felt safer than a police station for what was clearly a sensitive discussion. Luna spent the next hour researching
Detective Patricia Reyes, finding a professional record that included specialization in corporate fraud, embezzlement, and financial crimes involving technology companies. The coffee shop Detective Reyes had chosen was a local institution, the kind of place where business professionals met for informal discussions and students claimed tables for hours of studying. Luna arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a corner table that provided privacy while allowing her to observe the entrance. Detective Reyes was easy to identify, a woman in her 40s with short graying hair, wearing a navy blazer and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who had spent years asking difficult questions and demanding truthful answers. She spotted Luna immediately and approached with a direct smile that was both professional and reassuring. "Miss Martinez, Patricia Reyes, thank you for agreeing to meet with me." They spent several minutes on pleasantries while Detective Reyes ordered coffee, and Luna assessed the woman who was clearly about to reveal information that would change her understanding of recent events. Patricia Reyes had the bearing of someone who had seen enough corporate misconduct to recognize patterns quickly, but who retained genuine concern for the individuals caught in the aftermath of financial crimes. "I'm going to be direct with you," Detective Reyes began, settling into her chair with the posture of someone preparing for a significant conversation. "Meridian Technologies is currently the subject of a financial fraud investigation. We have reason to believe that several individuals within the company have been involved in embezzlement, contract manipulation, and potentially securities fraud." Luna felt the world shift around her, pieces of a puzzle suddenly clicking into place with devastating clarity. Marcus Blackwood? Among others, Mr. Blackwood appears to have been brought into Meridian specifically to identify employees who might discover or report irregularities in company finances. Your termination, Ms. Martinez, wasn't about attitude problems. It was about removing someone whose analytical skills posed a threat to ongoing criminal activity. The revelation hit Luna like cold water, shocking and clarifying simultaneously. Everything she had sensed about Marcus, his nervousness, his systematic evaluation of employees, his vague background, now made perfect sense as the behavior of someone working to protect criminal conspirators. "What kind of fraud are we talking about?" Luna asked, her analytical instincts driving her to understand the scope and mechanics of what had been happening around her. Detective Reyes opened a folder and spread several documents across the table, being careful to position them so that other coffee shop patrons couldn't observe their contents. Contract inflation primarily. Someone has been systematically adding costs to municipal contracts, creating shell companies to perform services that were never actually provided, and manipulating financial records to hide the theft. Luna studied the documents, recognizing some of the project names and contract numbers from her own work at Meridian. The Williams account, that she had questioned, the one that had contributed to Marcus's accusations about her attitude, was prominently featured among the suspicious activities. "The Williams account," Luna said, pointing to one of the documents. "I flagged irregularities in that project 6 months ago. The billing patterns didn't match the work being performed, and there were purchase orders for services that seemed unnecessary." Exactly. Your analysis identified several problematic contracts that were generating fraudulent profits. Mr. Blackwood's job was to ensure that employees like you didn't have the opportunity to dig deeper or report their concerns to authorities. As Detective Reyes explained the scope of the investigation, Luna realized that her termination had just been one small part of a much larger criminal enterprise. Meridian Technologies had been infiltrated by individuals who saw the company's municipal contracts and infrastructure projects as opportunities for systematic theft, using the complexity of government procurement processes to hide their crimes. How long has this been going on?
We believe the current scheme has been operating for approximately 2 years, but there may be additional activities that go back further. The total amount stolen is still being calculated, but it's likely to be in the millions of dollars. The magnitude of the fraud was staggering, but Luna found herself thinking about the human cost rather than just the financial numbers. Municipal contracts for infrastructure projects weren't just business transactions. They were investments in communities, in services that real people depended on. Water treatment systems, transportation improvements, technology upgrades for schools and hospitals. The money that had been stolen represented improvements that wouldn't be made, services that wouldn't be provided, infrastructure that wouldn't be built. "What do you need from me?" Luna asked, understanding that her role in the story was far from over. "We need your expertise," Detective Reyes replied.
Your analysis of Meridian's contracts and financial systems has already provided crucial evidence, but we need someone who understands the company's operations well enough to help us identify the full scope of the fraud and build a case that will stand up in court. Luna felt a surge of purpose that had been absent since walking out of Meridian's offices the previous day. I can do that, but I'll need access to files and systems that I no longer have. Detective Reyes smiled with the satisfaction of someone whose carefully laid plans were falling into place. That's where things get interesting. We've been working with federal authorities to obtain warrants for Meridian's financial records, and we've identified several employees who are willing to cooperate with the investigation. Over the next 2 hours, Detective Reyes outlined an investigation that was far more comprehensive than Luna had imagined. Federal agencies were involved because the fraud involved government contracts and interstate commerce. Financial analysts were tracing money flows through multiple shell companies and offshore accounts. Computer forensics experts were examining digital evidence that revealed the systematic manipulation of records and communications. Most significantly, Luna learned that she wasn't the only Meridian employee who had been targeted for removal. 3 other analysts had been terminated or transferred in the past 6 months, all of them individuals whose work had brought them into contact with the fraudulent contracts. The pattern was clear and deliberate. Identify threats to the criminal operation and neutralize them through corporate personnel actions. Sarah Chen, who still works there, has been feeding us information, Detective Reyes revealed. She volunteered to be an inside source after your termination made her realize what was actually happening. Luna felt a mixture of gratitude and concern for her friend. Sarah was taking significant personal and professional risks to help expose the fraud, motivated by loyalty to Luna and by her own sense of justice. The knowledge that her friend was actively working to uncover the truth provided both comfort and anxiety about the dangers Sarah might face. As their meeting concluded, Detective Reyes handed Luna a card with contact information and a case number. We'll be in touch soon with specific requests for your assistance. In the meantime, I'd recommend being careful about who you talk to and what information you share. The people involved in this fraud have demonstrated that they're willing to take significant steps to protect their operation. Luna walked back to her apartment with her mind reeling from revelations that had transformed her understanding of everything that had happened. Her termination wasn't a personal failure, or even a case of workplace politics gone wrong. It was evidence of criminal activity that had been systematically damaging her community and her company. The phone calls and text messages from colleagues now made perfect sense. People like Janet Morrison and Tom Rodriguez had instinctively recognized that something was wrong, even if they couldn't articulate exactly what they were observing. Their outrage on Luna's behalf wasn't just friendship. It was the natural response of honest people witnessing injustice. Back in her apartment, Luna found 17 new text messages and 6 voicemails waiting for her. The communications painted a picture of growing unrest at Meridian Technologies.
Employees began openly questioning Marcus Blackwood's decisions and demanding answers about Luna's termination. Sarah's latest message was particularly revealing. Marcus called an all-hands meeting for this afternoon. He says he wants to address concerns about recent personnel decisions and clarify expectations for professional conduct. Everyone is talking about how defensive he looks. Mrs. Patterson said she's never seen him so nervous. Luna immediately called Sarah, reaching her during her lunch break and speaking in the coded language they had developed for sensitive topics. "How are people reacting to yesterday's news?" Luna asked. "Like you'd expect. Tom has been asking everyone he meets whether they think the decision was fair. Janet has been researching company policies about wrongful termination. Even Mr. Kim from legal has been asking questions about proper procedures. And Marcus? Scared. He's been on the phone constantly, talking in hushed tones and looking over his shoulder like he expects someone to walk in and arrest him, which, given what you've told me, might not be far from the truth." Sarah's information confirmed what Detective Reyes had described, an investigation that was closing in on its targets, creating pressure that was making the guilty parties increasingly desperate and unpredictable.
Sarah, I need you to be extra careful, Luna said. If Marcus suspects that people are cooperating with an investigation, he might take actions that could put employees at risk. I'm being careful, but I'm not backing down. What they did to you was wrong, and whatever else they've been doing needs to be exposed. People deserve to know the truth. The conversation continued with Sarah providing details about the office atmosphere, which had become increasingly tense as Marcus attempted to reassert control while dealing with growing scrutiny from both employees and external authorities. His afternoon meeting was clearly an attempt to manage a situation that was rapidly spiraling beyond his ability to control. After ending the call, Luna spent the rest of the afternoon researching the legal and procedural aspects of corporate fraud investigations. She wanted to understand not just what was happening, but how the process would unfold and what role she might play in seeking justice for the crimes that had been committed. Her research revealed that financial fraud cases involving government contracts were typically complex, requiring coordination between multiple agencies and extensive documentary evidence. The investigation could take months or even years to complete, but the penalties for those found guilty were severe, potentially including lengthy prison sentences and substantial financial restitution. More importantly, Luna discovered that whistleblowers and cooperating witnesses in fraud cases were often eligible for protection under federal laws, including potential financial rewards if their information led to successful prosecutions and recovery of stolen funds. As evening approached, Luna received a call from Janet Morrison, who sounded exhausted and frustrated. "Luna, I just got out of the most ridiculous meeting I've ever attended in 15 years of corporate work," Janet began without preamble. "Marcus spent 45 minutes basically accusing everyone of disloyalty and unprofessional conduct, all because people have been asking questions about your termination." How did people respond? With the contempt he deserved. Tom actually stood up and said that the only unprofessional conduct he'd witnessed was the firing of one of the most dedicated employees in the company. Mrs. Patterson asked specific questions about documentation and procedures that Marcus couldn't answer. Even some of the younger employees who usually keep quiet were openly rolling their eyes. Janet's description painted a picture of a workplace in revolt, with employees who had previously accepted Marcus's authority now openly challenging his decisions and demanding accountability. The termination that was supposed to eliminate a problem had instead created a much larger crisis of confidence and morale.
"There's something else," Janet continued. "After the meeting, I overheard Marcus on a phone call. He was talking about accelerating the timeline and completing the transition before things get more complicated. I think whatever he's been planning is about to happen faster than originally intended." The information aligned with what Detective Reyes had described about the investigation, creating pressure on the criminal conspirators. If Marcus and his associates felt that their operation was about to be exposed, they might attempt to complete their theft and escape before authorities could act. "Janet, I need you and everyone else to be very careful," Luna said. "There are things happening that are bigger than just my termination. People who are involved in serious crimes might take desperate actions if they feel cornered." "Are you talking about actual crimes, like police and prosecutors kinds of crimes?" "I can't go into details, but yes. Serious crimes that could affect a lot of people." The gravity in Luna's voice seemed to communicate more than her words, and Janet's tone shifted to one of concern mixed with determination. "Then we need to make sure that the good people at Meridian are protected and that the bad people are held accountable. Whatever you need from us, we're ready to help." After ending the call with Janet, Luna found herself thinking about the courage her former colleagues were displaying. People like Sarah, Janet, Tom, and Mrs. Patterson were risking their jobs and their professional relationships to stand up for principles and seek justice. Their loyalty wasn't just personal. It was based on a shared understanding that some things were more important than individual security or comfort. That evening, Luna received an encrypted email from Detective Reyes with a preliminary list of contracts and financial transactions that the investigation had identified as suspicious. The list was extensive,
covering projects that Luna had worked on directly, as well as many others that she had only heard about in passing. As she reviewed the documents, Luna began to see patterns that her previous analysis had only hinted at. The fraud wasn't random or opportunistic. It was systematic and sophisticated, involving carefully planned manipulation of multiple projects over an extended period. The criminals had been stealing not just money, but public trust and community resources on a massive scale. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Miss Martinez, this is Grace from Meridian's front desk. I heard about the investigation from my friend in the police department. There are things I saw and heard that I think you and the detective should know about. Can we meet tomorrow?" Luna stared at the message, realizing that the investigation was expanding beyond what any of them had initially imagined. Grace Williams, the evening receptionist who had comforted Luna after her termination, had apparently been witness to conversations and activities that could provide crucial evidence about the criminal operation. The web of corruption that had seemed complex when Detective Reyes first described it was revealing itself to be even more extensive and damaging than anyone had realized. But with each new revelation, Luna felt a growing sense of purpose and determination. Her termination hadn't ended her ability to contribute to Meridian Technologies. It had freed her to help expose and eliminate the cancer that was destroying the company from within. As she prepared for bed, Luna reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 2 days. She had gone from being an employee who was terminated for attitude problems to being a key witness in a federal fraud investigation. The transition was surreal, but it felt more aligned with her values and capabilities than her previous role ever had. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and revelations, but for the first time since walking out of Marcus Blackwood's office, Luna felt like she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do.
The revelation came at 6:23 a.m. on a Thursday morning that would forever divide Luna's life into before and after. Detective Reyes called while Luna was reviewing financial documents at her kitchen table, surrounded by printouts and coffee cups that had accumulated during a night of analysis that had stretched until dawn. The detective's voice carried an urgency that immediately commanded attention. "Luna, we need to meet immediately. Something significant has developed overnight, and it's going to change everything." They arranged to meet at the same coffee shop as before, but this time, Detective Reyes arrived accompanied by FBI Special Agent Michael Chen and a woman introduced as Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Torres. The presence of federal law enforcement and prosecution officials signaled that the investigation had escalated beyond local financial crimes. "Miss Martinez," Agent Chen began, his manner professional but warm, "what I'm about to tell you is going to be shocking, but it explains everything that's happened to you and provides the missing piece of our investigation." Special Agent Chen opened a thick folder and spread several documents across the table. The first was a corporate ownership chart that mapped the complex structure of companies and subsidiaries connected to Meridian Technologies. The second was a series of financial wire transfers showing millions of dollars moving between various accounts. The third was a photograph that made Luna's coffee cup freeze halfway to her lips. The photograph showed Marcus Blackwood shaking hands with the man in an expensive suit, both of them standing in front of a luxury car in what appeared to be an underground parking garage. But it wasn't Marcus that made Luna stare at the image in shock. It was the identity of the man he was meeting with, James Harrison, the CEO of Harrison Development Group, one of the largest construction conglomerates in the region. A man whose name appeared on buildings throughout the city, whose company had built hospitals, schools, and municipal facilities that served hundreds of thousands of people. Mr. Harrison has been the primary beneficiary of the fraud at Meridian Technologies. His construction company has been awarded contracts based on inflated cost estimates provided by Meridian's compromised analysis. The additional money, millions of dollars over the past 2 years, has been split between Harrison Development and several individuals inside Meridian who were facilitating the scheme.
Luna felt the pieces clicking together with devastating clarity. Harrison Development hadn't just been a client of Meridian Technologies. It had been the destination for stolen public funds, the ultimate beneficiary of systematic fraud that had inflated construction costs and cheated taxpayers out of resources meant for community improvement. Marcus Blackwood was essentially Harrison's inside agent. His job was to ensure that Meridian's analysis supported inflated cost estimates and to eliminate any employees who might discover or report the irregularities. Assistant District Attorney Torres leaned forward, her expression serious but encouraging. Ms. Martinez, your analytical work had identified several projects where the numbers didn't add up. You were getting close to uncovering a pattern that would have exposed the entire operation. Your termination wasn't about attitude problems. It was about protecting a multi-million-dollar criminal conspiracy. The validation was overwhelming, but Luna found herself thinking beyond her own situation to the broader implications of what she was learning. How many projects were affected? How much money are we talking about? Agent Chen consulted his notes. At least 47 municipal contracts over the past 24 months. Preliminary estimates suggest approximately $8.7 million in fraudulent cost inflation, possibly more as we continue analyzing the financial records.
The numbers were staggering, but Luna's analytical mind immediately began calculating the real-world impact. $8.7 million stolen from municipal budgets meant schools that didn't get technology upgrades, parks that didn't get improvement projects, water treatment facilities that operated with outdated equipment. The theft had rippled through the community in ways that affected thousands of people who would never know their lives had been diminished by corporate greed. "There's something else," Detective Reyes said, her tone indicating that the revelations weren't finished. "We've discovered that this operation extends beyond Meridian Technologies. Harrison Development has been running similar schemes with consulting firms in 3 other cities, using local employees to manipulate analysis and inflate construction costs." The scope of the criminal enterprise was breathtaking, a systematic approach to stealing public money that had been replicated across multiple locations, involving dozens of individuals and potentially tens of millions of dollars in fraudulent charges to taxpayers. "What happens now?" Luna asked, understanding that her role in this story was evolving from victim to witness to something much more significant. Assistant District Attorney Torres smiled with the satisfaction of a prosecutor who had built a strong case. "Now, we need your help to ensure that justice is served and that the stolen money is recovered. Your analysis of Meridian's contracts and financial systems will be crucial evidence in the prosecutions we're preparing." Over the next 3 hours, the law enforcement officials outlined a complex legal strategy that would involve multiple prosecutions, civil asset forfeiture to recover stolen funds, and coordination with federal agencies to address the interstate aspects of the criminal operation. Luna's expertise would be essential, not just in analyzing the evidence, but in explaining the technical aspects of the fraud to judges and juries who might not understand the complexities of municipal contracting and financial analysis. As the meeting concluded, Agent Chen handed Luna a card with secure contact information. "Ms. Martinez, I want you to know that your cooperation in this investigation is not only appreciated, it's essential. Without your initial analysis and your willingness to help us understand what was happening, we might never have uncovered the full scope of this operation." Walking back to her apartment, Luna felt a mixture of vindication and responsibility that was both empowering and overwhelming. Her termination, which had felt like a personal and professional failure just days earlier, was actually evidence of her integrity and competence. She had been fired not because she was a problem employee, but because she was too good at her job to be safely ignored by criminals. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "Emergency at the office. Marcus didn't show up for work today. His assistant says his phone goes straight to voicemail. People are starting to panic." Luna immediately called Detective Reyes, who answered on the first ring. "Detective, I think Marcus Blackwood has disappeared. His assistant says he hasn't come to work and can't be reached." "We've been expecting this," Detective Reyes grimly replied.
We have warrants being issued for his arrest, and we flagged his passport and financial accounts. He may have realized that the investigation was closing in and decided to run. The conversation continued with Detective Reyes explaining that law enforcement had anticipated this possibility and had taken steps to prevent Marcus and other conspirators from fleeing the country or accessing hidden assets. But his disappearance meant that the investigation would need to move quickly to secure evidence and protect witnesses before others involved in the fraud could escape or destroy records. Luna spent the afternoon fielding calls from colleagues who were trying to understand what was happening at Meridian Technologies. The office was in chaos, with employees demanding answers about Marcus's absence and senior management scrambling to maintain operations while dealing with what was clearly a crisis of leadership. Janet Morrison called with information that painted a picture of systematic dissolution. Janine, Luna, it's like watching a house of cards collapse. Marcus's assistant found that his computer had
Wiped clean overnight. His office is empty. Everything personal has been removed. And HR is dealing with requests for information from what they're calling external investigators. How are people handling it? Luna asked. With a mixture of confusion and relief, honestly. Nobody really trusted Marcus, but we didn't expect him to just vanish. Tom from maintenance said he saw Marcus loading boxes into his car after hours 2 days ago, but we all thought he was just taking work home. The image of Marcus systematically removing evidence and personal items while maintaining the pretense of normal operations was both chilling and predictable. He had been planning his escape while continuing to interact with colleagues and subordinates as if everything was normal. There's something else, Janet continued. Mrs. Patterson was going through some of Marcus's files that he left behind, and she found documents that have nothing to do with his official responsibilities. Personnel files for people in other departments, financial records for projects he shouldn't have had access to, even what looks like surveillance reports on employee activities. Luna felt a chill at the implications. Marcus hadn't just been manipulating financial analysis to support fraud, he had been conducting systematic intelligence gathering on Meridian employees, presumably to identify potential threats to the criminal operation. Janet, you and everyone else need to be very careful about what information you share and with whom. This situation is more serious than most people realize, and there may be other individuals involved who are still at the company. After ending the call, Luna found herself thinking about the human cost of the fraud that was being revealed. The money that had been stolen represented more than numbers on financial statements. It represented community resources that had been diverted from their intended purposes, public trust that had been betrayed, and honest employees who had been manipulated and threatened. Her phone rang, displaying a number she didn't recognize, but which showed a local area code. Ms. Martinez, this is Isabella Rodriguez from Channel 7 News. We're investigating reports of a major fraud case involving Meridian Technologies, and we understand you may have information that could help our viewers understand what happened. Luna paused, recognizing that media attention was inevitable, but uncertain about how much information she could or should share while the investigation was ongoing. I'm sorry, but I can't comment on ongoing legal matters. You should contact the authorities who are handling the investigation. We understand your position, but our preliminary research suggests that this fraud may have affected municipal projects throughout the region. The public has the right to know if their tax money was stolen and what steps are being taken to recover it. The reporter's point was valid, but Luna knew that premature disclosure could compromise the investigation and potentially allow other conspirators to escape justice. She agreed to consider an interview after consulting with law enforcement officials, understanding that public accountability was important, but needed to be balanced against legal requirements. That evening, Luna received a call from Detective Reyes with an update that changed the trajectory of the entire investigation. Luna, we've made arrests. James Harrison was taken into custody this afternoon at his home, and we've arrested 3 other individuals connected to the fraud scheme. We've also executed search warrants at James Harrison Development Group and recovered substantial evidence of the criminal activity. The news was both satisfying and sobering.
Justice was being served, but Luna realized that the arrests would likely generate significant media attention and public scrutiny that would affect everyone connected to Meridian Technologies. "What about Marcus?" Luna asked. "Still missing, but we've traced him to an airport hotel. We believe he's trying to arrange passage out of the country, but his financial accounts have been frozen and his passport has been flagged. It's only a matter of time before we locate him."
As Detective Reyes explained the charges that had been filed, including conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, and theft of government funds, Luna felt a profound sense of vindication, mixed with sadness about the betrayal of public trust that the crimes represented. The investigation that had started with her wrongful termination had revealed a systematic criminal enterprise that had stolen millions of dollars from public coffers and corrupted the process by which communities invested in infrastructure and services. The arrests were just the beginning of a legal process that would likely continue for months or years, but they represented a crucial step toward justice and accountability. Late that evening, Luna received an unexpected call from Grace Williams, the Meridian receptionist who had witnessed so much of the suspicious activity that had preceded the arrests. "Luna, honey, I wanted you to know that the FBI agents who interviewed me today said your analysis was what broke this whole thing open. Without your work, they might never have been able to prove what was really happening." The acknowledgement from someone she respected reinforced Luna's growing understanding that her termination hadn't been an ending, but a beginning, the first step in a process that would ultimately serve justice and protect future victims of similar crimes. The truth had finally emerged, and it was more significant than anyone had imagined. The courtroom was packed with spectators, reporters, and municipal officials whose communities had been affected by the fraud scheme. Luna sat in the witness box, her voice steady, as she explained to the jury how systematic manipulation of construction cost analysis had enabled the theft of $12.3 million in public funds, a number that had grown as investigators uncovered additional fraudulent contracts. 6 months had passed since Marcus Blackwood's arrest at a hotel near the Canadian border, where he had been found with falsified documents and evidence that he was attempting to flee the country. The subsequent investigation had revealed a criminal network that extended far beyond what anyone had initially imagined, involving corrupt officials, complicit contractors, and manipulated financial systems across multiple states. Ms. Martinez, Assistant District Attorney Torres, asked, "Can you explain to the jury how your analysis of the Williams Municipal Water Treatment Project revealed the systematic fraud that led to this investigation?" Luna turned toward the jury, seeing faces that represented the communities that had been cheated by the defendant's crimes. "The billing patterns didn't match the actual work being performed," she explained in language that avoided technical jargon while remaining precise. "When I analyzed the purchase orders against the project timeline, I discovered that we were billing for services that couldn't have been provided when the invoices claimed they were completed." Her testimony continued for 2 hours, covering the meticulous analysis that had first identified irregularities and the systematic review that had revealed the scope of the fraud. Luna's analytical skills, which had made her a target for termination, were now being recognized by federal prosecutors as essential evidence in securing convictions against those who had betrayed public trust. During a recess, Detective Reyes approached Luna in the courthouse corridor. "Your testimony has been excellent," she said, "clear, thorough, and compelling. The jury understands not just what happened, but why it matters to their communities." Luna nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with being a public witness against powerful individuals who had systematically stolen from taxpayers. The trial had received extensive media coverage, making her a recognizable figure in discussions about corporate fraud and whistleblower protection. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you," Detective Reyes continued. "The Federal Recovery Program has been calculating financial rewards for individuals whose information led to successful prosecutions and asset recovery.
Given the scope of what your analysis uncovered, you're likely eligible for a substantial award. The possibility of financial compensation hadn't occurred to Luna, who had been motivated by principles rather than personal gain. But Detective Reyes explained that whistleblower awards were designed not just to compensate individuals for their courage, but to incentivize others to report financial crimes that affected public resources. After the trial concluded with convictions on all major charges, Luna found herself in the unusual position of being both unemployed and financially secure thanks to the Federal Recovery Award. The $1.8 million she received represented a percentage of the funds recovered through asset forfeiture and prosecution, money that would be returned to the municipal budgets that had been defrauded. More significantly, Luna discovered that her role in exposing the fraud had created opportunities she had never anticipated. Law enforcement agencies, consulting firms, and municipal governments had begun reaching out to her with offers to help them strengthen their systems against similar fraud schemes. The first major opportunity came from the city of Riverside, whose mayor had followed the trial closely and recognized that Luna's analytical expertise could help protect their community from future fraud. Ms. Martinez, Mayor Patricia Delgado explained during their initial meeting, "We want to hire you as an independent consultant to review our municipal contracting processes and help us implement safeguards that will prevent the kind of systematic fraud that affected other communities." The contract offered more than just employment. It provided Luna with the opportunity to use her skills to protect public resources and ensure that tax dollars were used for their intended purposes. Working with municipal governments, she could apply her analytical expertise to serve communities directly rather than through the filter of corporate interests. Over the following months, Luna's consulting practice expanded as word spread about her expertise in detecting and preventing municipal contract fraud. She worked with school districts, utility companies, and regional governments to review their contracting processes and implement analytical systems that would identify irregularities before they could become systematic theft. The work was both technically challenging and personally fulfilling, combining Luna's love of analytical problem-solving with a clear sense of public service. She found herself traveling throughout the region, meeting with public officials, training staff members, and developing systems that protected taxpayer resources. During this period, Luna also maintained close relationships with her former colleagues at Meridian Technologies, which had undergone significant changes following the fraud scandal. Sarah Chen had been promoted to lead the reformed data analysis department, implementing new oversight procedures and ethical guidelines. Janet Morrison had become the interim head of marketing, working to rebuild the company's reputation and public trust.
"It's strange," Sarah told Luna during one of their regular lunch meetings, "but the company is actually better now than it was before the fraud was exposed. People are more collaborative, more ethical, more focused on doing work that actually serves our clients rather than just generating profits." Tom Rodriguez, the maintenance supervisor who had been among the first to question Marcus Blackwood's decisions, had been promoted to facilities manager and had implemented new policies for employee feedback and organizational transparency. Mrs. Patterson, the administrative assistant who had noticed irregularities in personnel files, had become an unofficial ombudsman for employee concerns. The transformation of Meridian Technologies became a case study in how organizations could recover from systematic fraud by embracing transparency, accountability, and ethical leadership. The company not only survived the scandal, but emerged as a more effective and trustworthy organization. Luna's personal life had also undergone significant changes. The stress and uncertainty of the investigation and trial had motivated her to reconnect with family and friends, leading to a deeper relationship with her mother and a renewed appreciation for the people who had supported her through difficult times. Isabella Martinez had followed her daughter's journey from termination to vindication with a mixture of pride and concern, understanding that Luna had displayed the kind of principled courage that defined true character.
Their relationship, already strong, had deepened through shared recognition that integrity sometimes required personal sacrifice. "Mija," Isabella had said after the trial concluded, "you've proven that your values are more important to you than your comfort or security. That's the measure of who you really are." The mother-daughter bond had been strengthened by Isabella's decision to involve Luna more directly in Martinez Design Associates, recognizing that her daughter's analytical skills could enhance the firm's ability to manage complex projects and ensure financial accountability. Luna began working part-time with her mother's architectural firm, applying her expertise in systems analysis to construction project management and cost control. The collaboration combined Isabella's creative vision with Luna's analytical precision, creating a partnership that was both professionally effective and personally satisfying. 1 year after her termination, Luna received an invitation that surprised her. Meridian Technologies was hosting an awards ceremony to recognize employees and former employees who had demonstrated exceptional integrity during the fraud scandal. The company's new leadership wanted to publicly acknowledge those who had risked their careers to expose the truth and protect the organization's mission. The ceremony was held in Meridian's main conference room, the same space where Marcus Blackwood had once conducted his manipulative meetings, but the atmosphere was completely different, filled with genuine celebration of ethical behavior and commitment to transparency. Robert Kim, who had been promoted to Chief Compliance Officer, introduced Luna as the analyst whose courage and expertise exposed systematic fraud and saved our company from complete destruction by criminal conspirators. Luna's brief acceptance speech focused not on her own actions, but on the collaborative effort that had been required to expose and stop the fraud. None of this would have been possible without colleagues who were willing to ask difficult questions, support each other during uncertain times, and prioritize public service over personal comfort, she said, looking out at faces that included Sarah, Janet, Tom, Mrs. Patterson, and Grace Williams. The evening concluded with the announcement that Meridian Technologies was establishing the Luna Martinez Fellowship for Ethical Analysis, a program that would provide financial support for students studying systems analysis with a focus on public service and fraud prevention. This fellowship represents our commitment to ensuring that future analysts understand their responsibility to serve the public interest, even when doing so requires personal courage, explained Dr. Rachel Stevens, the new chief executive officer who had been hired to lead Meridian's transformation. As Luna accepted the plaque commemorating the fellowship established in her name, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a terminated employee to a recognized expert in systems analysis and ethical leadership.
Expert in municipal fraud prevention. The termination that had seemed like an ending had actually been the beginning of a career that was more meaningful and impactful than anything she had previously imagined. The recognition was gratifying, but more important was the knowledge that her work was helping to protect public resources and ensure that communities received the services and infrastructure improvements they deserved. Every fraudulent contract she helped identify, every systematic theft she helped prevent, represented taxpayer money that would be used for its intended purpose rather than diverted to criminal profit. Luna's consulting practice continued to grow, taking on increasingly complex and high-profile cases. She worked with federal agencies to develop new analytical techniques for identifying fraud in government contracts. She testified before congressional committees about the need for stronger oversight of municipal contracting processes. She trained investigators and auditors in the systematic approaches that had proved effective in uncovering the Meridian fraud. But perhaps most importantly, Luna found that her work had inspired others to speak up when they witnessed suspicious activities or systematic irregularities. Whistleblower reports increased significantly in jurisdictions where she had provided training, suggesting that her example had encouraged others to prioritize public service over personal security. 2 years after her termination, Luna received a call from Special Agent Chen with news that validated everything she had worked to achieve. "Luna, I wanted you to be the first to know that we've just arrested individuals connected to a similar fraud scheme in another state. The investigation was triggered by an analyst who had heard about your case and recognized similar patterns in her own organization.
Her report led us to a multi-million-dollar fraud that we would never have discovered otherwise. The knowledge that her example had inspired others to take action against fraud was more rewarding than any financial compensation or professional recognition. Luna had become not just an expert in fraud prevention, but a symbol of the difference that principled individuals could make when they refused to accept systematic corruption. As she prepared for another consulting engagement, this time with a regional water authority that wanted to strengthen their contracting oversight, Luna reflected on how her life had been transformed by a termination that had initially seemed like a career-ending disaster. She had discovered that her true calling was not just analyzing data, but using analytical skills to serve justice and protect communities from those who would exploit public trust for private gain. The work was challenging, sometimes dangerous, and always important. Exactly the kind of contribution she had hoped to make when she first entered the workforce 3 years earlier. The phone rang, displaying a number from a municipal government in another state that had heard about her expertise. Another community needed protection from fraud, another opportunity to serve the public interest, another chance to ensure that tax dollars were used to build the infrastructure and services that made life better for ordinary people. Luna answered the call, ready to take on whatever challenges awaited, knowing that her reputation for integrity and expertise had created opportunities to make a difference that extended far beyond anything she had imagined when she first walked into Meridian Technologies 3 years earlier. The phone call that would complete Luna's transformation came on a crisp October morning, exactly 3 years to the day after Marcus Blackwood had terminated her for attitude problems. Luna was in her home office reviewing proposals for a new municipal fraud prevention program when her phone displayed a number that made her pause. Meridian Technologies. Ms. Martinez, this is Dr. Rachel Stevens from Meridian Technologies. I hope you remember me from the awards ceremony last year. Luna smiled, recalling the impressive woman who had been hired to lead Meridian's rehabilitation after the fraud scandal. Of course, Dr. Stevens. How can I help you? I have an unusual proposition for you, and I think you'll find it interesting given your history with our company. We've been acquired.
The words hung in the air, carrying implications that Luna's analytical mind immediately began processing. Corporate acquisitions were complex events that could either revitalize struggling companies or destroy their culture and mission. The acquiring company is Martinez Design Associates, Dr. Stevens continued, her voice carrying a note of amusement. I believe you know the principal quite well. Luna's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips as the full meaning of the statement settled over her. Her mother had acquired Meridian Technologies. Isabella Martinez, the renowned architect who had built her firm on principles of integrity and community service, had purchased the company where Luna had been wrongfully terminated for trying to uphold those same principles. Your mother has been in negotiations with our board for 6 months, Dr. Stevens explained. She's particularly interested in our municipal contracting capabilities and our expertise in infrastructure analysis. She believes that combining architectural design with advanced systems analysis could create a more comprehensive approach to community development projects. Luna felt a mixture of shock, pride, and uncertainty. The symmetry was almost too perfect. The daughter who had been fired for ethical behavior returning to lead the reformed company under the ownership of a mother who valued integrity above all else. There's more, Dr. Stevens continued. Your mother has asked me to extend an offer for you to serve as Chief Executive Officer of the combined organization. She wants to focus on the creative and design aspects of the work, while you would handle the business operations, financial oversight, and systems analysis that ensured projects served their communities effectively. The offer was breathtaking in its scope and significance. Luna would not only return to Meridian Technologies, but would lead it as part of a larger organization dedicated to ethical community service.
the woman who had been terminated for asking uncomfortable questions, would become the chief executive responsible for ensuring that such questions were not only welcomed, but required. "I need to think about this," Luna said, though her analytical mind was already processing the possibilities and implications. "Of course, but I should mention that your former colleagues are quite excited about the prospect. Sarah Chen has already submitted a proposal for expanding the data analysis department. Janet Morrison has developed marketing strategies focused on ethical community service. Even Tom Rodriguez has submitted recommendations for facility improvements that would support the expanded mission." After ending the call, Luna found herself walking through her apartment, processing information that challenged every assumption about how her professional story would unfold. The termination that seemed like an ending was revealing itself to be the middle chapter of a narrative that was more complex and satisfying than anything she could have imagined. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Did Dr. Stevens call you yet? Please say yes. We need you back, and this time you'd be in charge of making sure nothing like Marcus ever happens again." Luna called her mother, reaching Isabella at her drafting table where she was working on plans for a new community center. "Mija, I was wondering when you'd call. I assume Dr. Stevens has made you the offer." "Mom, you bought Meridian Technologies, the company that fired me?" Isabella's laugh was rich with irony and determination. "I bought a company that has excellent technical capabilities, strong community relations, and a reformed commitment to ethical
Operations. The fact that they once made the mistake of firing my daughter for being too honest just makes the acquisition more personally satisfying." Luna found herself smiling at her mother's strategic thinking. Isabella hadn't just seen a business opportunity. She had identified a chance to create an organization that combined architectural vision with analytical rigor, creative design with systematic oversight, aesthetic beauty with functional integrity. The building industry needs companies that prioritize community benefit over profit maximization, Isabella continued. Your experience at Meridian, your expertise in fraud prevention, and your commitment to public service make you the perfect person to lead this kind of organization. Over the next week, Luna met with her mother, Dr. Stevens, and key Meridian employees to discuss the structure and mission of the combined organization. The conversations revealed a shared vision of community-focused development that would use advanced analysis to ensure that public resources were used effectively and ethically. Sarah Chen, now Director of Data Analysis, presented plans for expanding the department to include predictive modeling that could help municipalities identify infrastructure needs before they became crises. Janet Morrison outlined marketing strategies that would position the company as a leader in ethical community development. Tom Rodriguez had developed facility modifications that would create collaborative workspaces designed to encourage transparency and cross-departmental communication. Most importantly, Luna discovered that the employees who had supported her during the fraud investigation had used the intervening years to develop their own expertise and leadership capabilities. They weren't just welcoming her back. They were offering to help her build something unprecedented in the construction and development industry. The decision, when it came, felt both inevitable and transformative. Luna accepted the position of CEO, with the understanding that she would spend her first year working closely with Dr. Stevens to ensure a smooth transition and learning the aspects of organizational leadership that her consulting work hadn't provided. Her first day as CEO fell on a Monday in January, exactly 4 years after Marcus Blackwood had terminated her. Luna arrived at the Meridian building at 6:30 a.m., wanting to experience the moment privately before the workday began. The lobby looked exactly as she remembered, but felt completely different. The same marble floors and soaring ceiling, the same "Building Tomorrow Today" motto etched in brushed steel. But now she wasn't entering as a data analyst hoping to keep her job despite a difficult supervisor. She was entering as the chief executive responsible for ensuring that the organization lived up to its stated mission. Grace Williams, still working the early shift at reception, looked up as Luna approached. The older woman's face broke into a smile that combined personal affection with professional respect. "Welcome home, Luna," Grace said, using words that perfectly captured the emotional significance of the moment. "We've been waiting for you."
Luna's first executive meeting included all the people who had supported her during the darkest period of her professional life. Sarah Chen, now reporting directly to the CEO, presented analysis showing how the company's reformed practices had led to higher client satisfaction and more effective project outcomes. Janet Morrison outlined marketing campaigns that emphasized ethical community service as a competitive advantage. Robert Kim, still serving as Chief Compliance Officer, reported that the company had received recognition from federal agencies as a model for fraud prevention and ethical business practices. Our reputation for integrity has become our greatest asset, Dr. Stevens explained during the meeting. Municipalities are choosing to work with us specifically because they trust our analysis and our commitment to serving community interests rather than maximizing profits. Luna listened to the reports with growing appreciation for how much her former colleagues had accomplished during her absence. They hadn't just survived the fraud scandal, they had used it as motivation to create an organization that was more ethical, more effective, and more meaningful than what had existed before.
But the moment that truly marked her return came during a company-wide meeting where Luna addressed all employees for the first time as CEO. 4 years ago, I was fired from this company for asking questions about irregularities in our financial analysis, she began, looking out at faces that included many people who had witnessed her termination and supported her through the investigation that followed. Today, I stand before you as CEO of an organization that exists to ensure that such questions are not only asked, but answered. That public resources are protected, that community needs are prioritized, and that our work serves the people who trust us with their tax dollars and their futures. The applause that followed was more than professional courtesy. It was recognition that Luna's journey from terminated employee to chief executive represented something larger than individual success. It demonstrated that integrity, persistence, and courage could ultimately prevail over corruption, manipulation, and abuse of power. In the months that followed, Luna led the organization through an expansion that doubled its size while maintaining its commitment to ethical community service. The combined expertise of architectural design and systems analysis proved to be extraordinarily valuable to municipalities that needed both creative vision and financial oversight for their development projects. Luna's personal story became part of the company's identity, not as a story of victimization and recovery, but as evidence that the organization was led by someone who had proven her commitment to public service through personal sacrifice. Clients trusted the analysis because they knew the CEO had been fired for refusing to compromise her professional integrity. The fraud prevention expertise that Luna had developed during her consulting years became a specialized service that the company provided to other organizations. She trained analysts, developed detection systems, and testified in cases where systematic theft had damaged community resources. But perhaps most significantly, Luna discovered that leading an organization dedicated to ethical community service provided the sense of purpose and contribution that she had been seeking throughout her career. Every project protected public resources, every analysis prevented potential fraud, every ethical decision contributed to rebuilding trust between communities and the professionals who served them. On the 5th anniversary of her termination, Luna received a letter that provided the perfect conclusion to her journey. The letter came from a recent college graduate who had learned about Luna's story through the fellowship program at Meridian Technologies. Ms. Martinez, your example inspired me to study systems analysis with a focus on public service. I've just accepted a position with a municipal government where I hope to use my skills to protect taxpayer resources and serve my community. Thank you for showing me that integrity and expertise can make a real difference in people's lives. Luna read the letter in her office, the same space where Marcus Blackwood had once accused her of attitude problems. The room had been completely renovated, with windows that provided natural light and a layout that encouraged collaboration rather than intimidation.
But the real transformation wasn't in the physical space. It was in the understanding that individual courage could create opportunities for others to serve with integrity. The young analyst who had written the letter represented the ultimate validation of Luna's journey. Her experience of standing up to fraud and corruption had inspired someone else to choose public service, creating a ripple effect that would extend far beyond anything Luna could accomplish individually. As evening approached and the building emptied of employees heading home to their families, Luna remained in her office reviewing plans for a new community center that would serve low-income residents in a neighborhood that had been underserved for decades. The project combined her mother's architectural vision with Luna's financial oversight, ensuring that every dollar would be used effectively to create spaces where families could gather, children could learn, and communities could grow stronger. The work was exactly what Luna had hoped to accomplish when she first entered the professional world, using her skills to build something meaningful, something that would make
life better for ordinary people who deserved honest service from those they trusted with public resources. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "Great meeting today. I love working for a company where asking difficult questions is considered a job requirement rather than an attitude problem." Luna smiled, remembering the morning 4 years earlier when those same attitude problems had seemed to end her career. Now she understood that what Marcus Blackwood had seen as a problem was actually her greatest professional asset, the unwillingness to accept systematic corruption, even when challenging it required personal sacrifice. The termination that had felt like failure had actually been preparation for leadership. The investigation that had seemed like an ordeal had actually been training for the ethical oversight that defined her current role. The consulting work that had felt temporary had actually been education in the broader applications of her analytical expertise. As Luna prepared to leave the office, she took one last look at the photograph on her desk, the same picture of her college graduation with her mother that had provided comfort during difficult times. In the image, both women were expressions of quiet satisfaction and boundless possibility. Now Luna understood that those possibilities had been realized in ways that neither of them could have imagined when the photograph was taken. The daughter who had wanted to build something meaningful had become the CEO of an organization dedicated to ethical community service. The mother who had valued integrity above comfort had created a company that protected public resources and served community needs. Luna turned off the lights and walked through the building that had been the setting for both her greatest professional disappointment and her ultimate vindication. The elevator that had once carried her away in defeat now carried her toward a future where her skills, values, and experience would continue serving communities that deserved honest analysis and ethical leadership. The city spread out below as she walked to her car, a landscape of possibilities where every building, every infrastructure project, every community investment represented an opportunity to do work that mattered. Luna Martinez, the woman who had been fired for attitude problems, had become the leader of an organization that existed to ensure that such attitudes, commitment to truth, dedication to public service, refusal to accept corruption, were not problems to be eliminated, but values to be celebrated and protected. The story that had begun with termination had concluded with transformation, not just of Luna's career, but of an entire organization's mission and an industry's understanding of what it meant to serve communities with integrity and excellence.